Hey guys, I get to have a conversation with Dr. Megan Little today on sleep. We're going to talk about things like hormones, specifically testosterone, cortisol, the stress hormone, and what these have to do with sleep. And if my dog would move out of the way. And we get to go over things like, why do people gain weight when they are not sleeping right? All right, without further ado, here's the conversation. Hope you enjoy.
All right, so we are talking with Dr. Megan Little today, doctor of naturopathic medicine. Megan has been certified by the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching, and she's also currently working on a certification in sleep medicine, which you are almost done with. And so that is the most recent thing that you've done. And so we're talking about sleep today.
Yeah.
But you're also working in integrative dermatology,
A
um, and you've been doing that for the last 2 years also. So a little bit of everything.
little bit of
Um,
everything.
yeah, really. So when you first got into naturopathic medicine, well, that would have been about 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Um, did you see yourself doing this, or did you just kind of that was the interest and it just kind of led you here through.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting story. I started seeing a naturopath based on recommendation from my mom. She thought, "Oh, I think you would really like this." And I've always been really interested in health and passionate about health. My bachelor's is in public health and promotion and education, and so it seemed kind of like a natural thing. And during my first appointment with my naturopath, she just sat and talked with me about like, hey, these are some things you could do to be healthy. And I was like, oh, I want to do this. Like, this is great. I love this. So I applied and started going to school. And about my third year in school, I thought, this isn't exactly what I wanted. I don't want to be a primary care physician because that's what naturopathic medical school is. They train you to be primary care, especially in Oregon. And so I kind of went through this little crisis of faith, like, I don't want to do primary care, but I still love health and wellness. And I decided to
Mhm.
finish my degree because there's still so much I can do, even if I'm not practicing primary care.
Yeah.
And so now approach things with that mindset. Like I have that background so I can work with
Yeah.
people. And also, I'm really fortunate that I can work with other people's primary care physicians. So I can make recommendations and then primary care can follow up on things that I'm not legally allowed to do since I'm sitting in an
Mhm.
unlicensed state.
Yeah. And I feel like it's even more so now because more people are searching for answers for things that they can't find answers to. And so they are looking for people who just want to specialize in helping them figure things out, not
Yeah.
necessarily just a primary care doctor. So I feel like it's
Yeah.
a really good time for that too. It's
Yeah.
definitely needed. So that is how you started. How did you get into from there to doing sleep stuff?
So when I was in naturopathic medical school, it was probably the most difficult training I've ever done. The program is either 4 or 5 years where I went to school, and at the peak, I think I was taking about 27 graduate level credits. And that's a lot of learning, and it's great, but it's
Yeah.
also a lot of stress. And throughout school, I started developing some sleep issues, specifically with sleep maintenance insomnia. So I was able to go to sleep because I was exhausted, but then I'd wake up in the middle of the night just from this hyper arousal. I have so much to do. I have so much stuff on my mind. And then over the years, it's kind of waxed and waned, but really focusing on sleep was kind of a personal project. So how can I make my own sleep
Hmm.
the best? While I was in school, I did take electives in sleep medicine because I was interested in it. But I also feel like through this journey, I've come to realize how much sleep is a cornerstone of our health. People often think of nutrition first, or they think of
Hmm.
exercise and movement as being cornerstones, but I think that sleep is right up there with those and maybe even more important in some ways. If we're not getting adequate sleep, pretty much every aspect of our life is affected. And so just this long process of learning what good sleep actually looks like and how to manage my own sleep, it just really became like a passion project of mine.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely nowadays. I mean, like, I totally agree with that. That is what is put on the back burner for most
Yeah.
of us because um, hard work or our lifestyles just get kind of pushed up, and we feel like we can integrate nutrition into that.
Mhm.
But sleep isn't quite as easy to integrate when you're busy. Just
Right.
doesn't get in there. So
Yeah.
let's kind of look at um, the whole part of sleep, because sleep has to do with what we call that circadian rhythm. Can you kind
Mhm.
of give us a big picture of what circadian rhythm actually is?
Yeah, so I think the easiest definition is it's just a biological process in the body that's regulated by light and dark cycles. Typically, we think of the circadian rhythm as it being affected by sleep. That's the main thing that people think about. But we also have our circadian rhythm for our hormones, for example. And so, even though sleep is probably the biggest thing that people are aware of, it's a part of pretty much every cell in our body.
Mhm. So what are some of, like, you say hormones, and I mean, that just, I could talk about so many different things. Give me
Yeah.
an example of a hormone that it would affect and how it would do that.
Yeah, so the two most common hormones people think about when we think about sleep are melatonin and cortisol, and they sort of have an inverse relationship. When melatonin is high, cortisol should be in the tank. And then when cortisol is high, melatonin should be
And cortisol is the stress hormone, right?
stress
Okay.
hormone. It's that hormone that gets us up and gets us going in the morning. But other hormones that can be affected by our sleep are insulin, for example, or not sleep, not necessarily, but our sleep wake cycle is insulin. So
Mm-hmm.
insulin is, as a hormone, is most effective and most active in the morning and early afternoon. And in the evening, insulin is actually a little less responsive. Growth hormone is most active at night when we are sleeping. So we have these normal rhythms or patterns that our own hormones go through. Testosterone, a sex hormone that's present in both male and female, predominantly in male, is most active in the morning time.
So back to the cortisol, I think oftentimes we hear the word cortisol and people will associate that as like a bad thing, because it's, you hear so many things now with the word cortisol, and that is associating it with like stress and
Mhm.
um, going back to the busy lifestyle or whatever, people will associate it with that a lot. But you're saying like we need cortisol, we need that,
Yeah.
and that is actually a normal rhythm. So what if your body is not producing the cortisol it needs in the morning? How is that going to affect you?
So if your body is not able to produce enough cortisol, waking up in the morning is going to be a lot more difficult.
Mhm.
So we can think about cortisol as peaking first thing in the morning, and then throughout the day, it kind of just like slowly drops off, kind of like going down on a roller coaster.
So
Um,
could it sorry,
Go ahead.
could it do the opposite then? Like
Mhm. Yeah,
come
so
out later?
we can. So we through chronic stress, through different lifestyles, people who work shift work, for example, we've actually seen and documented people having flipped rhythms. So they will, if
Hmm.
they are working overnight, their cortisol is going to peak in the night and then taper
Hmm.
off throughout
Okay.
the night. When they go to sleep, normally the opposite of us.
Hmm.
Um, when we are dealing with chronic stress, people talk about adrenal fatigue, and I don't love that term. Mostly because when we think about in like allopathic conventional medicine, adrenal fatigue is a very serious like condition. It's a condition that needs to be medically treated. And it's not just like little nuances in cortisol. When somebody is chronically stressed, though, that rhythm can change. And that could either be it's peaking higher than it needs to be at the wrong times, or it's dropping faster than it should be. So we're more
Hmm.
tired in that afternoon slump than maybe we should be.
Okay. So is there any way that like it could cause cortisol to come on higher in the morning if your sleep schedules are off also?
hmm if your sleep schedules are off, yes, I would say that the cortisol peak that happens in the morning, if it's too high, that's just because you're in that wired state. You're in that, oh, I see the puppy now. You're in
Yeah.
that wired state where you're just on alert all of the time.
Okay. Yeah. And so that is when you start to feel that probably jittery kind of throughout the day, like you can't focus, right?
Chronic
Yeah.
fatigue. Yeah, wired but
Interesting.
tired.
Yeah. Um, So you also mentioned testosterone, and I was going to ask you about that one because I know like there's testosterone, there's also like estrogen and progesterone, and they're not what we think of as sleep hormones, but those you're saying those all can be um, influenced by our sleep cycle.
Yeah, if our sleep rhythm is off, then some of these other rhythms can be off. So with testosterone specifically, if we are sleeping late, not waking up early in the morning, our testosterone peak in the day is probably going to be a little bit later than somebody who has a well-regulated cortisol or sleep-wake cycle circadian
Mhm.
rhythm.
Is that
Um,
bad? I mean,
Not necessarily it's not bad, but if it's there, if it's happening, then why is it happening? What are the
mhm,
causes for that? Why are we not sleeping? Why are we not getting regular sleep-wake cycles that would make the hormone be secreted the way it should be? For men,
mhm,
it specifically gives them that little boost of energy in the morning. I don't think it's as strong for women because it's not one of our main sex hormones.
mhm.
Um, but for men, one of the like sleep apnea, I'm thinking specifically like men who have sleep apnea have actually seen decreases in their testosterone hormone because they're not sleeping well throughout the night, which is affecting their testosterone in the morning.
Okay. Can you hear him now? He's really chewing now.
Oh, he's good.
Okay.
He's good.
He's chewing on that bone. Um, so I was looking at some of these research articles that I had found, and same thing, like it was talking about female night shift workers um, have particularly high rates of incidence of breast cancer. Um, and it's talking specifically about those living in industrialized nations compared to those living in like developing countries. And this looks like one where they haven't said, oh, this is why. They're just noticing comparisons and connections to things. So they said melatonin rich blood collected following complete darkness slowed the growth of cancer tumors in this, while melatonin depleted blood collected from volunteers exposed both daylight and bright fluorescent light stimulated tumor growth. Um, there was another one. So that one talks a little bit about, being up at night and there being some kind of a connection with cancer and the ability for tumors to grow. There was another one here that talked about um, artificial light at night has been linked to increased risk of cancers in the body sites like the breast and colorectum. Did I say that right?
Colorectal, yeah.
Okay. And then, so their conclusion was artificial light at night is significantly correlated for all forms of cancer, as well as lung, breast, colorectal, prostate cancers individually. And then it says immediate measures should be taken to limit artificial light at night in the main cities around the world and also inside houses. So there were a few different articles that I saw just talking about artificial light. And I mean, we often call it like blue light, I think.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that's the same thing that they are talking about, and how those, some of them were specifically talking like they're trying to study the connections between that and specifically hormonal cancers. Like they had mentioned the prostate and the breast cancer, but that is becoming a big thing now. Um, this one also morning and evening blue enriched light exposure alters metabolic function in normal weight adults. So I am guessing, I mean, that to me, it all sounds like it has to do with the hormones. Is that right?
I think there's a lot of factors at play coming in. The factor related to melatonin, the hormone. So, melatonin in small doses helps to produce sleep. Melatonin is a
Mm-hmm.
supplement that is available over the counter. And I think the United States is one of like two or three countries that you can buy it over the counter. In most countries, Australia and
Yeah.
England, France, it's a prescription drug. Like you cannot get it
Okay.
over the counter in these
Mm-hmm.
countries. In low doses, it helps to stimulate sleep talking
Mm-hmm.
zero point 0.5 milligrams to like maybe 3 milligrams. When we're getting into 5, 10, 20, even 50 milligrams, melatonin actually acts as an antioxidant, and so it can help fight that cancer. So I'm guessing just from the descriptions you gave me that when we are when we're doing a normal light cycle and we're making sure we're avoiding that exposure, melatonin is going to be naturally higher in our own bodies. And that could probably be contributing to the fighting of those cancers or prevention of those cancers.
Mm-hmm.
Other factors are at play, though, besides just melatonin, because when we're not sleeping, we don't make good decisions, right? We tend to eat more junk food. We tend to drink more alcohol. We tend to do less activity, less exercise. And so all of these, like these three things are three big things that can contribute to these hormone sensitive cancers like prostate and or breast cancer. And so I think there's definitely a multifactorial picture here that's happening. Correlation doesn't equal causation. That's a pretty big saying in the medical community. But I think it's definitely something that we can pay attention to if we're trying to prevent cancers, like making sure that we're doing our basic healthy behaviors.
Yeah. So I think back when I was postpartum and very little sleep, especially with my third, and driving and thinking I should not be driving right now. And with him especially, I don't know, it might have been with the others. I think maybe I just remember his better because it seemed longer than the others. But I think there's not the ability to think quite clearly, but I think that also brings about like this longing for a dopamine hit a little bit more because I don't have the ability to do things that would normally keep my brain level and keep my dopamine levels balanced. And so I just look for something to come and help me out with it. So with that, I think about social media, especially. Like if you sit down at the end of the day, you've got a phone in front of you, and you just want to relax. And I know people have done a lot of connections between like dopamine hits and social media, but how can you tie that in to how that could be not good for our sleep cycles? And basically, I don't know, I feel like it can just be like a domino effect, like one thing after the other, because I want to be able to relax, but it sounds like that is not the best way to get my body balanced and ready for bed.
Right. Social media is like it's a double-edged sword. Like we use it to connect with people and to stay up to date on news and family and friends, but it's also not always a safe place, I would say. There can be a lot of aggravating or anxiety-provoking things on social media.
True.
And so when we turn to it to fill this dopamine need that we are trying to be happy and relax and just feel good and zone out, maybe it's actually producing cortisol probably and it making sleep a little bit more difficult.
And that's at the late part of the day when we shouldn't have the cortisol as well. Yeah.
One of the things that I recently started doing is I have an Android phone, and I'm pretty sure this is available on iPhones as well, but at nighttime, so 8 o'clock, I try to stop using my phone for any reason at all. And there is a setting on Android phones where you can go in and turn your phone to grayscale for specific hours of the day. So mine is set to grayscale from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. And so if I open I can still access my phone and look at my phone. But if I look at it, it's not colorful. It's not rewarding in the same way.
So
And
that's taking the blue light out as well, isn't it? Or is
I
it
don't
not?
know specifically if it filters blue light out as well, but it's removing that enjoyment aspect out of it that I want to keep looking out of it.
Yeah.
There are filters you can get for your devices, your computers and phones and laptops that will take out the blue light or reduce the blue light for you. F-Lux is one of the ones that's been around for, like it was around when I was in school. That's one that you can use on your computers. And I know that Android and like Kindle also have the ability to like turn the blue light down. So those are
Okay.
things you can do with your devices. If you have to be on them, I would recommend that. Or you can wear blue light blocking glasses at nighttime, and that would also help.
The last research study that I was talking about mentioned altering metabolic function in normal weight adults. And I can't remember if you had mentioned, did you mention the insulin? I feel like I heard the word insulin in there,
Yeah.
which that makes me think of metabolic function. So, um, can it make, I mean, I'm guessing it's not going to do that. Like it's a step-by-step process. It's not just
Mhm.
a, it's going to cause this, but can it help out with having extra weight if you are not sleeping
Mhm.
in that normal sleep cycle like you're supposed to be?
Yeah. And again, this is another one of those multifactorial things. The chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't sleep, we make poor decisions about food. If people don't sleep, they're more likely to seek those sugary, carby, starchy foods that are going to give them that dopamine hit and make them feel good. It
Mm-hmm.
also is going to give them that quick burst of energy from the sugar being digested really fast and then potentially a crash afterwards after insulin's secreted. But for people who don't sleep as well, they're not as active. They're not going to be wanting to hit the gym because they don't feel like they have that energy. And so I can definitely see that in practice, in practical real world, that people who don't sleep well have a harder time regulating their weight or a more difficult time even losing weight if they're trying to lose.
Mm-hmm. And so that, I mean, you're saying so that could be that they're not able to control themselves, but they're also, their hormones are going to be a little bit messed up, and then their brain isn't going to be working right in order to do the things they would normally do
Want
regularly.
to
Okay.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So what about then people who are working at night? Um, I mean, I guess there's some people that are going to take night shift better than others. I could never work night shift. I tried it once and I did not do well at all with it. But
Yeah.
I know some people, they just feel like they do great on it.
Mhm.
But then, like some of the studies that I'm seeing are saying, things, these cancers or health problems can run higher with people who are working night shift, especially long term is like the biggest is doing it long term, not necessarily short term, but in long term, it sounds like it can be really not good for your health.
Mhm.
So I can't remember what my question was with that, but I'm just curious, like that effect, how much does that affect? And is it going to be different, say, for someone like me who, like, I do a month of it and can't, I can't tolerate it compared
Mhm.
to someone who thinks they are made to live all night long.
Yeah. I think it does vary from person to person. I think a couple of things can make it easier. One, if you're metabolically healthy to begin with, if your
Mm,
body is resilient and has that vitality, it needs to make those sorts of shifts and then be okay afterwards. Someone who has a chronic illness or something like fibromyalgia, where they're chronically fatigued, or ME/CFS, those people would not be able to handle those sorts of swings one way or the other. So I think that definitely your kind of general constitution. I think somebody's kind of natural genetic disposition, if they're a morning person or a night person, could also play a part in this. We do have genes in our body that kind of code us to be morning larks or night owls. And so if
hmm
somebody is coded to be a night owl, potentially they're going to weather it better than somebody who is going to be a morning person
hmm
who does not do well late at night. So I think that those two factors could definitely be a part of it. And then long term, the body does adjust, right? Like we can put our bodies through so many different things, so much like torture basically. But over time, that will wear on us. We will see the detriments of that. And I think that that's what you're referencing with those studies about people in these long-term positions where they're working overnight or working shift work are at higher risk of different medical conditions or cancers.
hmm Um, so where, I'm curious where the line is drawn, as far as like someone has this personality, uh, or genes, that might make them more like a night person versus a morning person. So where do we draw the line with that then? Like I can just see some people going, well, like I tend to be more of a night owl, but how do you gauge that without actually sending yourself into some health issues?
So I don't think if you are doing personal experiment and trying to see like when your natural wake and sleep cycle would be, if you're doing that for a short amount of time, a month, 2 months, 6 months, I don't think you're going to see that much shift or put yourself at a lot of risk. My concern would be for somebody who is working a night shift 20, 30, 40 years.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot of individuality, and I think it comes back to needing to be aware of what your own personal tolerance is.
Hmm.
Um, I can remember being a teenager in youth group and pulling all-nighters because it was a blast and it was so
Hmm.
much fun to be up all night playing
Right.
games and eating pizza.
Yeah.
And now the thought of that or being able to do that is not something I could like I would even say like yeah I could do
Hmm.
that like it's not even something that's on my radar that would be fun to chaperone something like that or be awake all night. I
Hmm.
think recognizing and being okay with I'm a night morning person or a night person is important to this prospect or this aspect. We like I said earlier, we can force our bodies to do a lot of different things, but should we be forcing our body to do these things if it's not absolutely necessary?
So it just made me think of you going through it, like you said, when you are enjoying it, that is one thing. That's probably what got me through that long period of very little sleep was that during that time, not during the first children, but during the third one, I was, I had a very good um, just sense of purpose and enjoyment of life. I didn't
Mhm.
like not sleeping, but I had an enjoyment of life. But if you're going through a really stressful time, that's apt to mix up hormones, I guess. And so if you're already have like your sleep being mixed up, it's just adding, like you said, you're adding another thing into the mixture, like
Mhm.
the soup that you're creating of how many things can you take before it just kind of makes you crumble.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think once we see stress coming into our lives in any instance, it's just a really huge part of
Yeah.
adding things in. So,
Hmm.
um, if you have gotten way off, and you don't want to make it a long-term thing, what are some ways? So I'll give you an example too. I have uh, a mom who is working late at night and she gets home at 11 p.m. And so that maybe the dad's home with the kids or something. And he wants them to be able to see their mom before going to bed. Um, and so they did this for a while and the kids would get to bed. And, at that point, it's close to midnight. And they've
Hmm.
got maybe 3-year-olds going to bed at midnight, let's say. Um, and then after, 4 or 5 months, they're realizing maybe this shift isn't actually going to switch like they thought it would. And they're noticing behaviors from the kids or not. Um, I mean, that's a whole question in itself about kids too. Like, can can kids take as much as we can with the whole sleep cycles? But maybe let's talk about that first, and then we can go into how to kind of come out of a hard cycle.
Yeah. I think kids are a bit more resilient than adults with regards to sleep. They can handle those shifts a little bit better. Mostly, I think about like kids who can sleep anywhere. Like you see pictures on social media of like kids like sleeping halfway on a couch or falling asleep in cars or in the middle of doing activities like eating or something like that. Like I think kids are able to just sleep when they need to sleep. So if their sleep is disrupted overnight, I think they're going to try to find their body will try to find ways to make that up in other areas of the day. Now, just because they can do that long term, it's not a great idea because there's so much brain development that happens when children
Mhm.
are younger while the sleep is happening. So it's not something I would ever recommend you do for a long term.
Mhm.
As far as getting back on track when sleep has been off for either the whole family or for an individual, one of the things that I really like to do is have people create a menu of things that help them wind down at night. So doing things at night gets your mindset ready for this. I'm winding down. I'm calming down. It is time to rest. It's not time to work and be productive and to do my to-do list or all of the tasks that need to happen. Our bodies thrive off of rhythms and being in a regular cycle or a regular pattern of things. So when we can get back into a regular cycle where we're taking, 30 minutes to stretch or take a hot bath or have a cup of
Mm,
tea to do these kind of like calming activities, that signals to our bodies and our brains that it is time to wind down. It is time to shut down. It is time to rest and get more sleep.
okay. So if you are trying to get those rhythms started, um, I feel like we talked about it a little bit, but the circadian rhythm then isn't just what's happening at night. It's about what our body is doing first thing when it wakes up. Um, so what do you recommend for daytime rhythms that really help with sleep?
So, first thing in the morning is getting up and getting bright sunlight. So, within, I would say, 30 minutes of waking, I mean, really, anytime you can do it is good, but ideally 30 minutes within waking, getting sunlight in your eyes. If it's
Mhm.
cloudy outside, still go outside if you can. Old new homes have UV filters on their windows, but if you live in an old home, you might be able to get away with just standing next to the window. But getting bright
Mhm.
sunlight helps the body to secrete that cortisol that wakes us up.
Or
Another thing
like
that can
people
really
with big
help,
porches,
huh?
or people with big porches, that would be
Yes,
wonderful
yes,
just to be able to go out on the porch or something.
yes.
Yeah.
Another really great thing for our circadian rhythm and managing that is eating at regular times. So our body
Mm,
thriving off of rhythms, when it gets regular food, it feels safe, it feels secure, it feels like it has energy to do the things that it needs to do. If we're in this wired but tired, we're grabbing a croissant when we head to the grocery store, and then we're grabbing fast food on the way home, and then we maybe get dinner at like 8:30. Our body kind of struggles knowing what to do with that. Now, the body is resilient and it will figure it out, but it doesn't set you up for good sleep. And so making sure that you're eating pretty much at the same time every day, whether that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you're not a breakfast person, that's okay. Like get your lunch and get your dinner at regular times so that your body has the energy it needs to do the things that it has to
mhm.
do.
What about coffee first thing?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. So there are definitely two like divisions on the internet of like you shouldn't have coffee first thing. It stimulates cortisol. It's not good. But for people who have been drinking coffee for a long time or who are adapted to caffeine, I
Hmm.
have no problem with them getting coffee first thing in the
Okay.
morning. Ideally, like that's okay. I want you to be having water with it. Like I want a glass of water right
Hmm.
next to you on the table or on the
Hmm.
porch or wherever you're at. So you're also replenishing a lot of that moisture you lost overnight.
Yeah.
Um, for people who are caffeine sensitive, it's probably not a great idea to do caffeine first thing in the morning. It's going to set them up for kind of a up and down rhythm. Um, Something as small as getting like a couple of bites of food in your stomach beforehand could help with that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
See,
if
that's
you are
more of
not,
me.
that's you.
I have to, yeah, I can't do caffeine first thing. And I know that.
Yeah.
But my husband, I mean, it's coffee first thing every day, and it just doesn't affect him like it does me. And so, I mean, I don't see any problem with that. But for me, I definitely know I cannot do that.
Yeah. And knowing that is also important too. Knowing and being able to honor that. Like, if you have coffee first thing in the morning without having something to eat or drink beforehand, you know that that's going to set you up to probably be a little bit more jittery throughout the day, a little more anxious throughout the day. And so
Mhm.
knowing that kind of information about your own body and being able to interpret those things that you're feeling is also a really important part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what about going to sleep at night? We'll kind of finish up with preparing for bed. And I'm guessing there's a lot of people who are like, I feel like I'm preparing for bed the way I should be, but
Mhm.
then they go to bed and maybe they're like, oh, I'm gonna go right to sleep tonight, so I'm gonna go take a bath first.
Mhm.
And then they go in and they can't go to sleep.
Mhm.
What are some ways to kind of help your body?
Yeah. So going, excuse me, going back to that menu of winding down at night, baths are a really great one for that. When you start to feel tired, honor that. So there's a difference between I'm so tired I can't function, I need to go to bed at 6 o'clock, and hey, it's 8 o'clock, 8:30, I'm starting to feel like it's time to wind down.
Mm,
When we are starting to feel that wind down, we should be enacting on that. We should be honoring those signals from our body. Because if we are pushing past that, we're telling our body that, oh no, it's okay. We don't need to sleep. We don't need that
mhm,
right now. And so when we are ready to climb in bed, we're just going to feel awake and not ready to fall
mhm,
asleep. So recognizing when you're feeling those signals to go to bed or to wind down, and then enacting on that by doing some of those menu items like taking a bath or a cup of tea or reading a non-stimulating book or listening to some music or stretching or yoga. All of these things can help with getting ready for bed and falling asleep. Other like sleep hygiene things that can also be helpful is making sure that the temperature in the bedroom is appropriate. So most people
mm,
can't sleep unless it's like 69 degrees or less.
okay.
I keep my bedroom at night like 65 degrees on a good night. Like that's pretty good for me.
Mhm,
Um, but keeping the bedroom cool, making sure that the lights are turned down. So turning off your overhead lights when the sun goes down or when you're starting that wind down process will also clue your body into it's time to rest, it's time to calm down.
mhm,
And then making sure that you're blocking out ambient light. I am a firm believer that you should not have a TV in your room. It's like if you're going to have devices in your room, turn on blue light blocking or wear blue light blocking glasses. But ideally, we're not
mhm,
even using those in our bedroom. It's
mhm.
better if they can be outside of the bedroom, or if they're going to be in there, just don't look at them.
So are the blue lights actually raising your cortisol levels? Is that?
Not exactly, no. So blue light blocks, when we have light in our environment, it actually tells the brain not to produce
Mhm,
melatonin. So if we're
okay.
being exposed to light,
Saying
it's
it's
actually
morning
this
time.
absence. Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's just mixing up your times of the day.
Hmm.
I
And
see.
so so at night, if you can see your hand 5 inches in front of your face, that's actually enough light that your melatonin secretion could be suppressed a little bit. So when I'm
Mhm,
talking about being in dark, like complete darkness, if we can,
mhm,
get shades in your room, get out any sort of ambient light electronics like clocks or night lights if you can, if you're an adult and you don't need one, but um, even like a little bit of ambient light coming in from outside from a street light for people who live in the cities, that could be enough to suppress melatonin
mhm.
secretion and keep you awake.
So going into summertime, like we're doing, I mean, wintertime, I feel like it's big sleep time. I noticed more so this year that in February, March, I just really wanted to sleep a lot.
Mhm.
But summertime comes and it's light up here in the northern hemisphere.
Mhm.
We're in the north,
Yeah.
northern hemisphere, and it's light longer. How do we try and get around that to try and get our body to just balance a little bit? I
Yeah.
mean, I imagine it's okay if we're up a little bit later than usual since the sun is,
Yeah.
but for some people that would make their sleep very short.
Right. Right. So little things like blue light blocking glasses will be really, really helpful. Even wearing them, like even if you're not looking at screens, wearing them around the house, wearing them out if you have to go out and like grocery shop or something like that in the early evenings. And then just making sure to like turn down the lights, close the blinds. When our one, like at our house, we go to bed pretty early. I'm winding down at least by 8 o'clock. So at that time, we're closing the blinds on our house. We're blocking that outside light from coming in. We're only using lamps. We're not using overhead lights. And so all of that is really going to help signal your body. There's probably going to be some disruption no matter what, right? Because there's more activity in general in summertime.
Mhm.
But we should be able to withstand those slight fluctuations seasonally.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, we still go to bed here and it's light outside and we get to sleep somehow. So,
Yeah.
but it's just nice to know there's some things that we can do to help prepare our body for it a little bit
Yeah.
better. So you also have a PDF to share with people, and that is ideas that you've listed for helping to get your body kind of regulated and ready to sleep, right? So
Yeah.
I will go ahead and I will give that in the notes for our conversation so people can come and grab that. And then what is your favorite book on sleep? Or give me a
Yes.
couple of them.
Yeah, so I have two. One is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. He's a PhD scientist who's studied sleep for a long time. He also has a really great podcast. I would say his information and the level of his information is definitely more of a collegiate level. So it's
Okay.
very heady, it's very science-based. The other book I really like is Sleep Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. And this is a much more practical, actionable book. The chapters are very small. You basically have one chapter that you look at per week or so. And it just gives you an action item of something simple you can do to help regulate your sleep and get better sleep. Both are really great. Both are very well researched. So I would highly recommend those two books. There's
Okay.
lots of great sleep books. I'm actually reading one right now about the neurology and the science of dreams
Mm.
and sleep disorders, which has been
Oh,
pretty interesting.
interesting. Yeah, I bet. Okay, well, I will put those down too so people can see where they can grab those. And I'm also going to share where people can find you. What is the best place? Is it your website or Instagram?
Yeah,
Where can
so
people look you up?
Instagram is a great one. My Instagram is Dr. Period Megan Little. So you can connect with me on there if you'd like. I haven't been as active on there in the last month or so, but I'm hoping to get back to that in the next coming weeks. But I also have a website, so you can check that out at drmeganlittle.com. If you're interested in a consultation, I'm happy to do that for free. If you just want to shoot me a message and say, hey, do you have any references or resources for this? I'm happy to provide those as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I mean, you have learned a lot over the last 15 years. So I'm sure there are a lot of people who could glean from all of your knowledge just with the different things that we are going through today. So I had one more question I wanted to ask
Oh.
because I was thinking of this earlier. Red light.
Mhm.
Does red light, because you have mentioned before using like the fake sunlight
Mhm.
in the morning. What about red light? Does that do anything in the morning? Should you be using it at a certain time? How does that work into circadian rhythm?
So it's not that it's going to make you secrete melatonin or cortisol or suppress them, but using red light as an alternative. So red light, there's a couple of different, like there's far infrared light, there's red light that you get in like a
Mm-hmm.
sauna. Um, but using like red light bulbs in your lamps or something like that, that's going to help you because it's going to be less blue light. So
Okay.
in the evening, using red, actually, I was just looking at red light bulbs the other day on Amazon, oddly enough, because I was like, oh, I should put my red light bulbs in this lamp. But using those instead at nighttime, in the morning
Okay.
time, it's not really going to affect anything. We need the blue light in the morning, whether that's from artificial sources, if we're
Mm-hmm.
using those to help with seasonal affective disorder, or if we're using them to help us wake us up when it's dark outside.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be a lot better for your sleep-wake cycle than a
Okay.
red light would.
So a red light might be a good idea if you have a kid who just needs to have some kind of a night light.
Mhm.
Go find a red light for them. Okay.
100%.
All right.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you got something out of it. And don't hesitate to get a hold of Dr. Megan if you are trying to figure out some health concerns and anything that is having to do with your own sleep cycles. Again, look in the box below. You can get that free printable PDF to give you tips on helping to balance out your own sleep patterns. Until next time, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.